She was an ordinary woman, living a modest life, but her heart carried an extraordinary dream. More than anything, she wanted to be a mother. While others dreamed of wealth, luxury, or fame, her greatest wish was to have a child to love, someone to call her own. But life had not blessed her with children. For years, she lived with that silent pain, pretending to be strong when people around her asked questions, smiling politely when others showed her their babies. Yet deep inside, she felt an emptiness that nothing else could fill. One rainy afternoon, her life took a turn. She passed by a small orphanage, and the sound of children's laughter drifted out. Something pulled her inside, almost like fate was guiding her steps. She walked through the hallway and saw children playing, their eyes lighting up when visitors entered. Among them was a little boy, sitting quietly in the corner, holding a broken toy car. While the other children shouted and laughed, he stayed silent, as if the world had already taught him not to expect much. She stopped and looked at him. There was something about his eyes, lonely, deep, and filled with a sadness far too heavy for a child. He did not run to her. He did not smile. He only looked up for a moment and then lowered his gaze again. In that instant, she felt something stir inside her heart. It was as if the universe whispered to her, "This is the one. He needs you." The orphanage caretaker told her his story. He had been left there when he was very small. No relatives had come for him. Families who visited often chose other children who smiled, children who talked more, children who seemed easier. But this boy, quiet and withdrawn, was always left behind. He is difficult, some said. He is too silent, others complained. But she didn't see a difficult child. She saw a boy who had never been given a reason to believe in love. That night, she could not sleep. She thought about his sad little face, his small hands clutching the broken toy. She thought about the emptiness in her own life. And she asked herself, if I can give him a home, if I can give him love, why shouldn't I? The next morning, she returned to the orphanage. When she told the caretaker her decision, they looked at her with surprise. "Are you sure?" they asked. Raising a child alone is not easy, especially a boy like him. He will need patience, sacrifice, and endless care. She nodded firmly. "I am sure," she said. "I don't want perfect. I want him." The process was not simple. There were papers, interviews, and endless questions. People around her doubted her choice. Some whispered, "Why would she take someone else's child? She doesn't know his background." Others said, "A single woman raising a boy. It will never work." But she ignored them all. She had made her decision, and nothing would change her mind. Finally, the day came when she was allowed to bring him home. The boy stood by the door of the orphanage, holding a small bag with his few belongings. He looked uncertain, his eyes scanning her face as if to ask, "Will you really take me with you? Or will you leave me like the others did?" She bent down, smiled gently, and said, "Come on, son. Let's go home." The word home seemed to surprise him. For a moment, he didn't move. Then, slowly, he walked toward her. When she held out her hand, he hesitated, then placed his small fingers in hers. It was the first step of a journey neither of them fully understood yet. The first night at her house was quiet. The boy sat on the edge of the bed, unsure whether he was allowed to sleep there. She brought him food, but he only ate a little, as if afraid it would be taken away. He kept his bag close to him, unwilling to unpack. She realized then how deep his fears went. He had lived too long expecting people to abandon him, so she did not rush him. She simply said, "This is your room. No one will take it from you. You are safe here." She kissed his forehead, and though he did not react, her heart knew he heard her words. Days turned into weeks, and slowly the boy began to change. At first, his words were few, but he started to speak more. At first, his smiles were rare, But one morning, when she made pancakes shaped like stars, he laughed. It was a small laugh, but to her, it was worth more than all the treasures in the world. She worked harder than ever, sometimes taking extra jobs to provide for him. She gave up comforts for herself so that he could have books, clothes, and toys. There were struggles moments when he threw tantrums, moments when his anger came out, moments when he pushed her away. But through it all, she stood firm. Each time he tested her love, she showed him patience. Each time he doubted, she reminded him, "I am not leaving you. You are mine." Bit by bit, the walls around his heart began to break. He started to call her mother. He began to run to her when he was scared, to hug her when he was happy. For the first time in his life, he felt wanted. For the first time, she felt whole. That was the beginning of their story, one woman's choice to love, one boy's chance at a family. Neither of them knew then how hard the road ahead would be, or how much it would change them both. But in that moment, they had something precious, the first seed of a bond that would grow stronger with every passing year. Asterisk. The first years after the adoption were filled with challenges. At first, the boy was quiet, almost too quiet, as if he was waiting for the day she would change her mind and send him back. He carried his small bag everywhere, even to school, because he feared one day he would return to the orphanage. She noticed, but she didn't force him to put it away. Instead, she reminded him gently, "This is your home now. You don't need to be ready to leave. I will never let you go." But trust is not built in a single day. The boy had learned to protect himself with silence, with walls no one could easily break. He didn't smile much, and when he did, it was brief, as if he was afraid happiness might be stolen away. At school, he struggled. Other children teased him for being the adopted one. Some said he wasn't really loved, that he was just taken out of pity. The cruel words cut deep. He came home angry, sometimes refusing to speak, sometimes throwing his books aside. She never punished him harshly. Instead, she sat by his side, listening when he was ready. She told him stories of people who had struggled and still built strong lives. "Being adopted doesn't make you less," she told him. "It makes you chosen." Still, the road was not easy. When he became a teenager, the storms truly began. He tested her love again and again, just to see if she would give up like others had. He came home late, sometimes skipped school, and often shouted when she tried to guide him. "You're not my real mother." He yelled once in anger, and the words pierced her heart like a knife. She cried that night in silence, but by morning she was ready again. Standing strong, though, the next day, she told him, "You may not see me as your real mother now, but I see you as my real son. Nothing you say or do will change that." Those words stayed in his heart, even if he didn't admit it. Slowly, he began to notice the sacrifices she made for him. She worked long hours, sometimes skipping meals, so he could eat better. When he needed money for school projects, she found a way, even if it meant walking miles instead of taking the bus. When he fell sick, she stayed awake through the night, sitting by his bed, wiping his forehead, whispering, "I'm here. Don't worry." He began to understand that her love was not temporary. It was real, strong, and unshakable. Over the years, their bond grew stronger. The boy, once angry and lost, began to change. He studied harder, pushed himself to do better, and even started protecting her in small ways. When people gossiped about her, he defended her. When neighbors questioned her decision to adopt, he proudly said, "She is my mother." The turning point came one winter evening. He returned from school and found her sitting tired on the couch, her hands rough and her eyes heavy with exhaustion. She had worked overtime for weeks just to pay for his tuition. That night, something shifted in him. He realized how much she had given up for him, how much of her life she had poured into his. He sat beside her quietly and said, "One day, I'll make you proud. I'll give back everything you gave me." It was the first time he spoke of gratitude, and her eyes filled with tears as he grew into a young man. Their relationship transformed. No longer was he just a boy trying to test her love. He was her son in every way. He began to succeed in school, win small awards, and dream bigger than he ever had before. Each victory he dedicated to her. Each challenge he faced with the strength she had taught him. The neighbors, who once doubted her, now admired her. They saw how the boy had grown into a respectful, hard-working young man. They whispered less and praised more. People began to say, "She raised him well." Blood doesn't matter, love does. Yet through all this, she never reminded him of her sacrifices. She never said, "You owe me." She only said, "Be good. Be kind. Be the man I know you can be." But the boy remembered. He remembered every hungry night she pretended to be full so he could eat. He remembered every tear she hid so he wouldn't feel guilty. He remembered every word of encouragement when the world tried to tear him down. Deep inside, he promised himself that one day he would repay her, not because she asked, but because his heart demanded it. Years passed, and the boy became a man. He carried her lessons with him wherever he went. He studied hard, worked harder, and built his life step by step. Through failures and successes, one thing guided him: the memory of the woman who had chosen him when no one else would. And as he grew into success, he prepared for the day when he could finally reveal to her how deeply he valued her love. What he would do years later would not just be a thank you. It would be a gesture so powerful, so moving, that it would prove her sacrifice had never been in vain. 2 decades passed, like pages turning in a book. The boy she once carried home from the orphanage was no longer a boy. He had grown into a man, tall, confident, and full of life. He had studied hard, worked harder, and built a future with the same determination she had once given him. But though the years had changed him, one thing remained the same. He never forgot the woman who had given him everything when he had nothing. She was older now. Her hair had silver strands. Her hands had grown rough from years of work, and her steps were slower. Yet her heart was the same, gentle, kind, and full of love for the son she had chosen. She never asked for anything in return. For her, raising him was enough. To see him alive, healthy, and strong, that was her reward. But he remembered every sacrifice. He remembered the nights she went without food so he could eat. He remembered how she stayed awake when he was sick, how she worked long hours just to pay for his books. He remembered her tears, the ones she hid behind closed doors when he shouted in anger as a teenager. And now, as a grown man, he wanted to repay her not with words, but with something so big that it would show her how much she truly meant to him. The day came quietly. She thought it was just an ordinary evening when he asked her to come with him. He held her hand, guiding her gently, like a son guiding his fragile mother. She asked where they were going, but he only smiled and said, "You'll see." They walked until they reached a place she did not recognize at first. Then her eyes widened. Before her stood a beautiful new house. Not a small one, not like the one they had lived in for years, but a strong, spacious home, built with care and love. Her mouth trembled, her heart raced. "Whose house is this?" she whispered. He turned to her, his eyes shining. "It's yours, Mama. This is my gift to you. For 20 years, you gave me a home when I had none. You gave me love when the world gave me nothing. Now, it's my turn. You will never work another day. You will never worry again. This is where you will live in comfort, with everything you deserve." Her knees weakened, and she covered her face with her hands. Tears streamed down her cheeks, but this time they were not tears of pain, they were tears of joy, of pride, of disbelief. She shook her head, unable to find words, but "I never asked for this," she cried softly. "I know," he said, holding her hands. "That's why you deserve it even more. You never asked, but you gave me everything. You never demanded, but you sacrificed everything. Without you, I would be nothing. Today, I want the world to know who you are, the woman who chose me, the woman who made me a man." He had gathered friends, neighbors, and even some of her old co-workers to witness the moment. People who once whispered doubts about her decision to adopt now stood in silence, their eyes full of admiration. They watched as the boy she had once rescued stood proudly by her side, announcing, "This is my mother. She gave me life, and today I give her back the life she deserves." The crowd clapped, some even cried. The woman, trembling with emotion, looked at her son as if seeing him for the first time, not the small boy she carried from the orphanage, but the man he had become, a man of gratitude and honor. From that day on, her life changed. She no longer worked long hours or worried about bills. She spent her mornings in the garden he built for her, her afternoons in peace, and her evenings surrounded by the warmth of her son's love. And every time she walked through the house he gave her, she remembered the little boy with the broken toy car, the boy no one else wanted, the boy she had chosen now, 20 years later. That boy had given her a gift greater than wealth. It wasn't just the house or the comfort, it was the living proof that her love had not been wasted. She had turned an unwanted child into a man who honored her above all else. She often told people, "I thought I was giving him a family." But in truth, he gave me one too. And when she looked into his eyes, she knew the truth. The greatest reward for her sacrifice was not the house, not the gifts, but the love of the son who had once been lost and now was forever hers.